Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. Well, Bob is making headlines as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. I still can't figure out what human services are and why the government needs to provide them. And I still can't figure out why Bob can't just go through with the chainsaw like Musk is doing to the USAID and the Department of Labor and the Department of Transportation and the EEOC. Oh, that's right. All those agencies are investigating Mush for all of his wrongdoings and violations. No problem. Just dismantle those departments, fire all of the inspector generals who were inspecting Mush's wrongdoings, and there you have it. But somehow Bob has to move very slowly and methodically. And I actually address some of these concerns from what I call the RFK Jr. deniers, meaning they're trying to justify his important inaction, and he's taking action on things that I think are red herrings. We're going to dive into that into this video. We're going to talk about not just red herrings, but the red dye and his move to make the food manufacturers more responsible, I guess, as to what they're putting in food. Nothing wrong with that per se, except if it becomes the smokescreen and the bait and switch, the straw man, so to speak, and the red herring actually distracting people from what really should be done. That's what we're going to talk about. Let me know in a comment what you think his top priorities should be as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And while you're doing that, I do want to thank the sponsor of our video, and that is over at noblegoldinvestments.com. And there is a special alert from Noble Gold. Gold has surged 46% in less than a year, doubling the gains of the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. My own commentary, if you're in the stock market, you're probably sitting on pins and needles with all of the ups and downs that have been quite extreme over the last few days. Back to the Noble Gold message, this is not just another rally for gold. There are worldwide reserves are shifting, exposing cracks in the monetary system. Investors are losing confidence in paper gold and demanding physical metal, creating a massive gap between gold owed and gold available. But this isn't just about how institutions breaking another system. This is about how you can profit from it. So right now, Noble Gold Investments has a limited supply of investment grade gold bars. I'm talking about physical gold that you can have shipped to your house. We're not talking about certificates or anything like that. I want you to get your questions answered by the experts at 877-646-5347. So banks are scrambling to fulfill their obligations, pushing gold prices higher. You can profit. Smart investors are already moving into physical gold, and Noble Gold Investments makes it easy for you to do the same. And right now, when you make a qualified investment, Noble Gold will give you this free 10th ounce gold coin. You'll get that with your order. So don't wait until it's too late. I would love for you to go to noblegoldinvestments.com, turn others' panic into your profit. Again, that's noblegoldinvestments.com. I'll have a link for you in the description box below, along with the disclaimer that there's always a risk of investment of any kind. There's no guarantee, but you can find out what your options are over at noblegoldinvestments.com. Friends, let's take a look at this headline here. This comes from ABC News. RFK Jr., I affectionately call him Bob. It's a nickname for Robert. He tells food leaders that he wants artificial dyes removed from food products before he leaves office. Kennedy said removing dyes is a top priority of the Trump administration. And there he is. What do you have to say about that, friends? Is removing dyes from food like a top priority for you? Well, I'll tell you what. I don't buy food that has dye in it. That's what I do. I'm in favor of a free market. I'm in favor of a lot of choices for consumers, and packaged foods carry labels. So you can read the label. In fact, I'm having a little get together with some friends at the end of this week, and I'm going to have just, cheese and crackers and grapes and a few snacks. And I was trying to find a box of crackers that was not made with genetically modified foods, or it's called genetically engineered foods, or they also call it bioengineered foods. And in fine print, a lot of people aren't aware of that. I typically don't eat packaged foods. I just wanted to have some on hand for my guest, and I was able to buy organic an organic brand that clearly states on the label non-GMO. So we already have the labels to help educate us. Now, some of you have made some very good points in terms of those who don't have a lot of choices in their food. For example, someone who's at a hospital or in a nursing home. And I would say if that is your loved one, then you could bring the food to them if that is of concern to you. I definitely support healthier choices in these institutional settings. Absolutely. Do I want there to be more regulations and more rigmarole and all of that? No, I thought we were supposed to be after efficiency. How come Dog Eat Dog has not gone through the Health and Human Services, which has the largest budget of any department in the federal government? Why hasn't Dog touched that? Inquiring minds want to know. So I don't agree that removing dyes is a top priority for me in Health and Human Services. And I see this whole push as a bait and switch. I'm going to share what that means in just a moment. In fact, let me share another image with you because this accompanied the headline from ABC News. And I also did go to the Health and Human Services website to get the press release. But I thought this was really interesting. So I have something from ABC, I have something from CNN, and it showed this image. Now, if you don't read the story that accompanied this image, I think this is intentional because it looks to me as though someone who has eaten ultra processed food now is in a medical environment. Is that going to be a ventilator? Is he getting oxygen? What's going on here? And the headline says, Americans love ultra processed foods. Science wants to know why. Well, it turns out this individual is one of several that have volunteered to eat junk food and then have everything be measured. You can read that article if you're interested. That's not the point of my video today, but the point is that they're using this image with the headline that Bob wants these food manufacturers to remove certain additives or have them be, actually more accurately, he wants them to be approved by the FDA and go through more of a regulatory process. And having this image makes it seem to me as though eating processed foods is going to land you in the hospital. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't eat processed foods. It's a choice that I make. And if I want to have a Twinkie or a Ding Dong or Fruit Loops or Doritos, like I want that choice. So here's the story. U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy has begun the process of eliminating a U.S. Food and Drug Administration program called GRAS, G-R-A-S. That stands for Generally Recognized as Safe. Critics say that this has been abused by the food industry for decades. Nearly 99% of new chemicals used in food or food packaging since 2000 were greenlit for use, not by the FDA, but by the food and chemical industry, meaning the FDA allows, up till now, has allowed these food manufacturers to state that the ingredients that they are using are generally recognized as safe. Now, ideally, they're not just pulling that information out of their hat. They're using the standards set by the food and chemical industry. So ideally, it's not done completely haphazardly. So this article goes on to say that obesity is a worldwide epidemic, according to the World Health Organization. Well, you know what I think about them, and I don't even know why that had to be inserted into this story, but it says that it's estimated that nearly 260 million Americans will be overweight or obese by 2050. That's 25 years from now, unless policymakers take immediate action. All right, there are a few things that trouble me here. Let me know what troubles you. Number one, I don't think the government should be involved in what we eat. I remember some years ago, oh my gosh, it had to be 10 years ago or more, in the state of New York, where they wanted to get rid of the big gulps. They wanted to limit the size of soft drinks that could be served at restaurants. You may agree with people needing to cut down on their sugar and their intake of sodas, but that should be an individual choice. And if someone wants to buy a big gulp, God bless them, go buy it. It has nothing to do with me and nothing to do with the government. As far as I understand, that never went through. But what did happen is restaurants were required, I don't know if they still are, but they were required to put how many calories was in one of their meals. Now, first of all, how do we even trust what the restaurant is saying about the calorie count in that meal? Secondly, it may not be accurate. As I say, that may not be accurate. Third, for me, it takes the enjoyment out of eating food. You may like to know how many calories are in your meal, but it is an example of government overreach. Why should they be regulating mom and pop restaurants who now have to go and have their meals analyzed? They have to pay for that. They have to print up new menus. I'm just not in favor of the government sticking their noses into our food, especially in this day and age where we're told that King Mush is the smartest man in the world. He is the genius of our time, and he's going through with a chainsaw, cutting through bureaucracy. Yet this Health and Human Services is now going to expand its regulations. I'm not in favor of it. So let me go on here. Somehow it's the government's responsibility that people are obese. It doesn't make sense to me. For the first time in history, this article says the potential of ultra-processed foods, I guess that's different than just processed foods, ultra-processed foods in the US is being investigated as part of the new 2025-2030 US dietary guidelines slated to be published by the end of 2025, where the government tells you what to eat, how much, and what kinds of foods. Why should the government be doing that? It doesn't make sense to me. So once those guidelines are finalized, they will form the basis of federal nutrition policy for the next 5 years. Well, I suppose if there are some federal programs and they are following what type of food and how many calories or something in their programs where they're providing the food or the nutrition, then I suppose that would make sense, but not in our own choices. So Kennedy announced that he had met, this is Monday, I'm filming this, today is Wednesday, March 12th. Kennedy announced that he had met with the chief executive officers, with the chief executive officers of Kraft, Heinz, General Mills, Tyson Foods, Kellogg's, Smucker's, and Pepsi to discuss a solution. You should be able to exercise informed choice, Bob said, and I agree with that statement. You should know what that product is, what's in your food, and what the health impacts are. And that's all we're going to do, Kennedy told Fox News host Sean Hannity. Well, if that's all they're going to do, then that's fine. But let me share with you why I believe this is a red herring and a bait and switch, and where this could go off the rails. I'll share that in just a moment. Let me continue the article. We are going to incentivize people, Bob says. Okay, that's where my alarms go off. How are you going to incentivize people? Are you going to charge obese people more for using Medicare? Are they not going to be qualified for Medicaid? What are these incentives that you are going to do exactly? Will people have to wear a Fitbit to measure their steps and their sleep? Will they have to put in their calories and their macros, which, by the way, I don't mind tracking my macros, but I am not going to be giving that information to the government. He also says we're going to incentivize companies to be transparent. He loves that word. And we're going to inform Americans about what's making them sick. All right, this is where the red herring is. Where nobody wants to be sick, he says. So I take issue with that. Maybe some people want to be sick. My friend and fellow freedom fighter, Dr. Amanda Vollmer, along with others such as Dr. Sam Bailey, Dr. Mark Bailey, Dr. Tom Cowan, Dr. Andy Kaufman, and others, believe that sickness can be a way for the body to cleanse itself, to strengthen itself, to heal itself. So maybe I want to be sick. Maybe I want to take a few days off from making videos and stay in bed and prop my feet up and have some tea and honey and take a few days off from my everyday responsibilities. So no, I don't like this emphasis on nobody wants to be sick and demonizing people who are ill, just like it happened throughout all of the cooties years, where we were supposed to be deathly afraid of getting sick, deathly afraid of others who might make us sick. So I don't really care for that phrase as well. But I want to go back to this one. He says, we are going to inform Americans about what's making them sick. Here comes the bait and switch. Here comes the red herring. So red dye is really a red herring in my view, whereby Bob and others, in the name of science that you can trust, because now he's brought transparency and trust back to the government agencies, they're going to determine that these childhood illnesses and that children getting cancer and heart attacks and other conditions that should not really happen to children, that suddenly that's going to be blamed on the processed foods. And it's not going to be blamed on, oh, I don't know, some other type of product that might have been introduced into their bloodstream. This is what troubles me. The narrative, the dialogue, the conversation, all being wrapped around these processed foods instead of, oh, I don't know, the spraying in the air, the fluoride in the water, the products that are being introduced into people's bloodstreams. Let me share with you a couple of comments that I found on Twitter. So first of all, this is his post here, and you'll see he says, great discussion today with consumer brands, CEOs of Kraft Heinz, General Mills, Tyson Foods, Kellogg's, USA, Smuckers, and PepsiCo on advancing food safety. He loves that word safety and radical transparency. What's the difference between transparency and radical transparency? Inquiring minds want to know. He wants to protect the health of all Americans, especially our children. We will strengthen consumer trust by getting toxins out of our food. Let's make America healthy again. I've taken issue with this in the past. You can't make someone healthy. It's not the government's responsibility to make you healthy. I don't even think it's the government's responsibility to recommend anything. Why not leave that to true experts? And this should be a conversation that you have with your own health advisor or coach or clinician or what have you. I know that many of you are not a part of the mainstream medical merry-go-round. I certainly am not. But I don't like this conversation going toward the food is what's making the children sick, when you know and I know it is most likely something altogether different. Now, I was not the only one who had that comment. So Dr. Jane Ruby, who someone told me is actually in Florida. I wouldn't mind. I don't know if she is in Florida, but she writes, "You unmitigated fraud." She comes out a lot more forcefully than I do. Babies and children are still. Oh, I don't even can't say this out loud on my channel. She says are still dying from the cooties cocktail, but you keep chasing Fruit Loops. All right, Mary Talley Bowden, who is someone that I thought probably would be a better choice for Health and Human Services Secretary, if it even needs to exist, says, yet all babies are still expected to get the 3 jabs by the age of 9 months. Friends, I did a deep dive on the 100 doses, over 100 doses that children are recommended to get, that this fellow, Bob, recommends publicly. He has stated more than once that he recommends and he stands by the current CDC schedule. Is he going to apologize to the parents of children, the children that have been harmed or worse? So this is a response on his Twitter page from Dr. Jane Ruby, from Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, over 100 doses. Here's someone else, Blue Moon Chaser, please stop the spraying. Isn't that more important to you than the red dye? I can choose not to take the red dye, but the spraying affects all of us. I've said that many, many times. So we will strengthen consumer trust by getting toxins out of our food. Let's make America healthy again. All right, I have a few comments that I'm going to wrap up here with, friends. All right. I'd rather he spend his time taking care of the spraying in the skies and gutting that schedule that he says he supports. King Mush was able to do it. Why can't Bob? All right. You already have a choice of what you want to buy and what you want to eat. You already have that choice. Removing the ability of the food producers to self-report the substances that have already been generally recognized as safe by the chemical and food industry, it's going to increase government regulations. And what is that going to do? It's going to drive up food prices. It's going to limit choices. Food likely will be more expensive, as the companies now will have to devote resources to filing these notices with the FDA. And this move increases bureaucratic red tape. It's not efficient. But most of all, aside from all of those things, it's a red herring in terms of what is really important related to the health issues of our country. So 100 plus of these jabs from infant, hours old, and even prior to that, if the mother is getting some during the pregnancy, which goes into the baby's bloodstream, over 100 during those years from 0 to 18. Shouldn't that be what's being addressed? Yet I just did a video about measles and about the measles vaccine recommendations on the CDC website, which clearly states that the vaccine is the best way to prevent getting measles. And Bob himself has said time and again that he recommends that parents get their children vaccinated against measles. The FDA, okay, here is the acting FDA commissioner, Sarah Brenner. She says the FDA is committed to further safeguarding the food supply, which means restricting it, by ensuring the appropriate review of ingredients and substances that come into contact with food. That's a strange way of putting it. She says the FDA will continue to follow our authorities and leverage our resources to protect the health of consumers to ensure that food is a vehicle for wellness. All right, I take issue with that statement as well. Yes, food can be a vehicle for wellness. I actually happen to promote eating healthy, natural, wholesome food. I love to nourish myself at a high level with high quality foods that don't include Fruit Loops and Doritos and Kraft macaroni and cheese. But maybe once in a while I want to have that. Or if other people want that, I don't think it's the government's role to remove that. So I don't think food is only a vehicle for wellness. Let me know in a comment below if you enjoy food. I enjoy food for the taste. I enjoy the fellowship, enjoying it in community. I like to indulge from time to time. Yes, I even engage in emotional eating and stress eating. And I certainly have done so over these years with all of the stresses that have been inflicted upon us. I did eating in my period of grief over my loss and sorrow of my beloved family members. So yes, I do enjoy food for things other than just a vehicle for wellness. Food should be free choice. It's a free market. Packages already have labels of what is on that package. And I don't think that we should be expanding more government regulations that are going to increase our food cost. And more importantly, that's going to take the conversation away from what really is causing harm to those in our communities. What say you? Thank you, everybody, for being on board. I look forward to seeing you in an upcoming video. We are going to talk about tariffs and free trade because a lot of people still don't quite understand how that works. I want to break it all down for you, and I appreciate having you on board. Be sure to check out my Substack. It's absolutely free, peggyhall.substack.com. For those of you that have upgraded to a paid subscription, I'm so grateful. You are a partner with me as I am doing this important work. And together, yes, together, we are marching this all the way to heaven. See you soon, everybody.